Peace, y'all. Thanks for tuning into another episode of the Real Ops Podcast, man. Every Sunday, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on YouTube. Before I get started, man, click the link down below, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and make sure you don't miss any of this game that's going to be given out on the Real Ops Podcast. Because at the end of the day, man, it ain't no real ops. We're going to turn these ops into opportunities. And right now we're going back into a series that I started, episode 3 of emotional intelligence, stemming on relationships and the women's behalf. So let's get into it, family. Click that link below. Let's go. You often feel others aren't getting your point. So what happens with this is, if you constantly feel like you don't connect with your communication, then it's one of those things where you need to ask and see what you can do differently. You know what I'm saying? Because that's one of those things where emotional intelligence, it's a state of honesty. For one, you have to be honest with yourself, and you have to be honest on working on the places where you know you may fall short at, attacking your weaknesses in a sense. You know what I'm saying? That's big. That's a big thing. You got to attack your weaknesses and be able to hold yourself accountable. That's a big thing for you women. We're going to get into it. 2, you blame others for your problems. Man, this is something I can relate to. I've been in a situation with with women in a relationship or whatever, and somehow I ended up being the blame for their wrong choices, or for their disrespect, or for their lack of loyalty, or whatever it was. And that's a big sign of low emotional intelligence, especially in women, when y'all want to blame us for the choices or for whatever it is that you may have going on. And see, what happens is, the biggest thing what happen is when you start blaming other people for whatever it is, man, you cut off the ability to grow. And that's exactly what happened in the situation that I was in. Our ability to grow as a couple, it was cut off because I became the blame for everything because they lacked self-accountability. So at the end of the day, all your struggles or complications, you can't come up with a scapegoat for that. You can't come up with, you know what I'm saying, a solution for that based on you want to blame other people. Well, I only did that because you said this. Well, I only did that because you came here. Well, I only did that because, no, you did that because you chose to do that. Don't allow other people, or don't allow people to make you their scapegoat, because basically they just lack accountability and they don't want to hold themselves accountable. You know what I'm saying? That's a big thing. And the flip side of that is understanding that when you are emotionally intelligent and when you are operating on a higher vibration, then you understand it's more productive to look for the cause of the issue, to get to the root of the problem, instead of just passing around the blame, because eventually you're going to stay stuck in that sand. You're going to stay stuck in that quicksand. You're not going to be able to move out of that space because you're so stuck on counting and blaming others that you lack accountability. So there's no truth. You lacking empathy, and you become emotionally volatile. All these things, man, stem just from having a low vibration of emotional intelligence. And these things are key in a relationship, especially in the black community, man. We see this all the time where, one of us, either the man or the woman, is blaming the other for, for whatever it may be. They blaming each other. They're blaming each other because they're having a hard time avoiding the difficult truth. And the difficult truth is, no, you allowed this to happen based on your choices. No, you allowed somebody else to come in between the relationship based on your choices. So that's a lack of accountability, and that's something that, us as men, us as women inside of a relationship, man, if you notice some things, it's one or two things you can do. You can sit down and try to build with that person and try to grow and try to point out those things. But a lot of times it's best to just vacate the premises, man, and get the hell about the situation, because they're not going to really reciprocate what it is, because they're too caught up on blaming you for their problems. So a person can never get to the root when they're looking at you like you're the cause, and you know what I'm saying, you're the reason why, because the lack of accountability is at such a high rate that it don't really matter what you say or what you point out. So you got to recognize the times of the situation when it's time to hold and it's time to fold, and you got to get the hell up out the way. All right. Another sign that we see, you're often disappointed that people don't understand you. Now, this is one of those things where I want to say this is 90% on the women than the men, because the women will feel like he don't understand me. Oh, he just don't understand me. He don't understand how I feel. Well, he not gonna understand how you feel, and he never will if you don't hold yourself accountable, speak some truth, and be able to convict yourself of the things that was right or the things that was wrong. So yeah, it's easy to feel like people don't understand you when you have a hard time learning to accept other people's perspectives and not just looking at everything like under the rim or under the scope of your perspective. You have to be able to open up stuff and see a different perspective. You know what I'm saying? For one, just to even be able to work on these things and to get past certain levels and certain struggles. You understand what I'm saying? Because that's big, man. That's big. Struggling to take accountability. That's one of the most telling signs of low emotional intelligence of a person is a lack of accountability. Period. And a tendency to just shift the blame. You know what I'm saying? That happens all too often to where, you want to shift the blame and you want to make everybody else the reason why. And as y'all can see, a lot of this, it falls under the same thing: lack of self accountability and lack of truth and self awareness. You know what I mean? And not having no empathy to where you want to understand how somebody else feels so that way you can relate and maybe be able to grow from the situation or be able to come to some type of resolve or come to some type of solution based on, one of y'all operating on lower frequencies when it comes to the emotional intelligence, man. So these things is key. These are often obstacles in relationships that we ignore. We ignore these obstacles when somebody has emotional intelligence because us as men sometimes, for some reason, we've got under the notion that where it's like, well, shit, I'm gonna have to deal with something from all women. All women. I've heard it all. All women is crazy. All women got a certain. Nah, man, that's not true. That's not true. That's a toxic way of thinking, and it's just not true. It's just not an accurate statement. You know what I'm saying? You're not gonna have to go through something with all women. You're not gonna have to fight, and it's not gonna always be something with every person that you with. No, it's always something with somebody that lacks accountability. It's always something with somebody that has low emotional intelligence. It's always something with somebody that has a tendency to blame others. There's always something with somebody that has poor conflict resolution skills. We gotta look at this shit for what it is and not just be like, well, as a man in a relationship, you gonna go through something with the female regardless. Nah, man. No, you granted, you're gonna have different perspectives going in. I'm man, she's woman. But at the end of the day, if we're both operating on high levels of emotional intelligence, then we can come to a resolve. We can resolve conflicts. I can hold myself accountability and take some of the blame off of you, and we can blame each other, and that way, ultimately, we can grow, family. We can grow. Man, you can't grow with nobody that you feel like, well, yeah, I gotta always deal with a certain element of something, or you're on eggshells because if I say this, man, she gonna trip. That's not somebody that you want to grow with, family. And at the end of the day, that's somebody that you might need to just let go. Because really, when you're operating on that level and you have that emotional intelligence, you're able to realize that it's not all about you. It's not all about you. It's not all about how you feel. It's not all about how you see things. It's about coming to a common ground and coming to an understanding in a relationship when you're dealing with the opposite sex. And both parties, both men and women on both sides, have to be equally invested and have to be willing to invest the hard work that's required and that's needed. You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of people get into situations, and it's happened to me before. You hook up with a female, you only with her just based on the physical attraction, and there may be an element of lust that you wanna, you know what I'm saying, that you trying to crave that urge. You know what I'm saying? You urge her to be lusting, and she bad, she got body. You know what I'm saying? The ass is fat, whatever it may be, whatever appeals to you. Those are things that get us sidetracked, family, and get us to not really see the lack of emotional intelligence when I'm dealing with this female. Just listening to her. I don't know her like that, but just being around her and listening to her, listen to how she always blame other people for her problems. Listen to how she lacks self accountability. But sometimes we so caught up on getting that thing that we be like, shit, I ain't worried about that. I ain't got to deal with that. No, you do got to deal with that because that's the person that you about to lay down with and that you about to ultimately form some type of bond and connection, you know what I'm saying, once the sexual intercourse or whatever exchange, you know what I'm saying, now you kind of locked into a situation that you thought maybe you was going to be able to get out of and initially you got into because of lust. But now you trapped and you stuck with a person that don't really operate on the same level of emotional intelligence, and now you got a problem on your hands, man. That's how you end up with women that don't want to let you go. That's how you end up with women that are stalking you. That's how we end up with, with just with just the craziest of the problems. I mean, you name it. A lot of these things in relationships, it stems from lack of emotional intelligence. And I'm not just here to bash the women because this ain't all about the women. Like I said, this is on both sides. But a lot of times when we're talking about lack of empathy, lack of self-accountability, poor conflict resolutions, a lot of times that does fall on women. Why? Because they operate out of their emotions. And they don't want to resolve something that they feel like they can blame you for. They don't want to resolve something that they feel like I had no account in that. That was all you. They don't want to resolve something that they feel like, well, you shouldn't feel like that anyway. No empathy. You're going to tell me how I should feel about something that you did that wronged me. It's crazy, family. It's crazy. And we really got to look at it going into 2024 because y'all see how the world is changing and we got all these different confusion with the identities and the genders and all that. Man, that's a bunch of bull, man. A lot of that comes from lack of self-accountability. I'm going to just be the first to say it. The men who don't want to be men, they don't want to hold themselves accountable as men. The women who don't want to be women, they don't want to hold themselves accountable as women. They want to go off and take the responsibility off of them, call themselves others or whatever it may be, and then that puts them into a safe space to where they don't have to have empathy for other people. They don't necessarily have to have self-accountability because they're taking themselves out of the righteous nature that they were born under, either female or male. It's just that simple, man. So pay attention, man, to what's going on in the world. This emotional intelligence and the lack of is big. It's bigger than we want to put our hands on to be able to say that that's what it is. Because at the end of the day, when there's no emotional intelligence, you can't grow. Being in a relationship, you're just not gonna grow. You're not gonna grow. You can be with each other for years, but y'all not really growing. Y'all just going along with each other. Y'all not really growing. Y'all ain't built nothing together. Y'all ain't established nothing together. Yeah, y'all might laugh and have fun and all that. Hee hee ha ha. The sex is good and all that. But where have you really got from the point A where you started to where you at now with that person that you claim to be your significant other or that you've been in a relationship with for the last for however long? You gotta really reverse engineer and look at everything how it started and go down the years and really realize what's going on. Sometimes us as men, we really have to hold ourselves accountable and be like, well, damn, where am I lacking? What is my weaknesses? What are the things that I can attack that's really going to get these things back on track? Or what can I do for myself to become a better leader and to really fall under my purpose out here in the world? I don't know, family. The question is open, but at the end of the day, we have to start with being emotionally intelligent, especially as men. We've seen some of the signs that stem from women. So now, fellas, you got a little, you got a different scope. You got some binoculars to look to and really figure out, like, is this chick really, is she really operating on the same level of emotional intelligence as me? Is this somebody that I need to stay away from? Is this somebody that I just need to back up from and not move so fast or whatever it may be? But we have to figure out how to navigate through these next, through these next stages of life, man, when we're dealing with things and we're trying to build a relationship and ultimately get in our bag. So I'm going to go back through it. I'm going to resurface, some of these tips So let's go through it real quick, man. One of them was you often feel others are not getting your point. If you constantly find that people don't connect with you in your communication, ask yourself what you may need to do differently, because that's one of those things that may fall on you when you often feel like other people ain't getting your point. You blame other people for your problems. Number two, when you blame others, you give up your chance to grow. It's just that easy. It's easy to find a scapegoat. It's easy to find a reason why this didn't happen. All that stuff is easy, man. It's always harder to look at yourself and attack yourself and be self-aware and understand, like, nah, I fell short on that. I could have handled that a little different. And then ultimately, it would have turned out different. You know what I'm saying? If I wasn't blaming them for my problems. Women, stop blaming us for y'all problems and the choices that sometimes you make that ultimately come from a lack of self-accountability in the beginning. That's two. You're bad at reading people. You're bad at reading people. Let me just read something for y'all. In business, reading people, understanding what they're saying beyond their words is a tremendously useful skill, and an inability to read people is a strong sign that your emotional intelligence is lacking. Because that's one of those things where, yeah, you don't have no empathy if you can't clearly see that what you said just affected this person or whatever it means. You know, you have an inability to read people, to read the room, and that ultimately is something that stems from a level of low emotional intelligence, because you're in your feelings. You feel how you feel, so you don't want to go outside that and really try to, really try to resonate, or really try to, you know what I'm saying, feel what the other person is feeling. Have some type of empathy for the situation. You know, that's one of those things. That's definitely a sign, and that's definitely a big thing that holds us back and that sets us back in these relationships that we're trying to have out here. Empathy. You lack empathy. I was just talking about that. People who are empathetic are able to understand how other people feel and how their own words and affection and actions affect others. Period. People who are empathetic are able to understand how other people feel and how their own words and actions affect others. So when you break it down like that, you can really look at it and think and really see and look at those people that are in your life, in your circle. You know, if you're a man, look at the women. If you're a woman, look at the men, and really see how their own words and affection and actions affect other people. You know, someone with low emotional intelligence can like unknowingly become like kind of bully you with jokes, because they don't have that empathy and they don't have the perspective, you know, to be able to have the insight to know that, well, certain things I say is going to affect people with my words. And then at the end of the day, they just might not care. They just might not care. I know what I'm about to say is about to strike a nerve and get up under your skin. And sometimes that's exactly why I'm saying, is to get a rise or whatever it may be. Fellas, this happens a lot, where the woman to say something, get a rise, and push you in the corner to where you be ready to go upside her head or what. It's low emotional intelligence, and that's somebody that lacks empathy for you, and that's somebody at the end of the day, that's a dangerous person, because that person will say things or push you to a point that'll strike every nerve in your body and ready to have you flip. Having difficulty forming those close relationships is a clear sign that you have low emotional intelligence. And women, this is really for you, because not too often I hear women saying how, you know, I can't get a good man, or every time I thought I had somebody, or this and that and that. Well, if the pattern is the same, then you have to understand that, you know what I'm saying? Then a lot of times it's you, because what I've learned is that God, he will ultimately remove the problems, but he will keep you in a pattern until you better before he moves you out of that space. So understand that. He's not going to keep you in a state of problems where, you know, it may be dangerous or whatever. God will remove problems out of your life. But he will keep you in those patterns until you change, until you know, adapt to new ways and you're able to hold yourself accountable and you're no longer operating on that same frequency. So we have to understand these things, man. We have to understand these things. So we're gonna go through it real quick. Real quick. You often feel others aren't getting your point. You blame other people for your problems. You're bad at reading people. You often disappointed people and feel like people that don't. You often feel like people don't understand you. Basically, that's 4. Number 5. Sometimes you're surprised by what you learn about other people because you're not giving them recognition on, you know what I'm saying, anything outside of what you see for yourself. And that goes back to the episode when I was talking about how you got certain people around you who operate under a certain frequency, under certain levels. Automatically they think you operating under that. So they speaking for you, they talking for you, and they thinking for you under the same realm as if you were operating on their vibration or their frequency. And that's just not it. Number 6, you lack empathy. We got into it. You lack empathy. If you missed it, go back into the video, check it out. You lack empathy. And number 7 is you have difficulty forming those close relationships. And that comes from a combination of things. That's, you know, lack of empathy, lack of accountability, difficulty naming or acknowledging emotions. You're blaming others. You're emotionally volatile. Poor conflict resolution. These are all things that we struggle with, especially in our community, inside of a relationship. And this is why we have a lot of, you know, the kids and stuff that's getting out of here. Oh yeah, don't worry about it. We're going to get into it. This is the foundation. Emotional intelligence is the foundation of the relationships that I'm getting into before we get to the behavior and the mannerism of the kids. Because remember out here, y'all, it ain't no real ops. We're going to turn these ops into opportunities based on our perception and our mindset. And we're going to recondition the condition that we've been living under for so long. Thank y'all for tapping in, man. Double R is your host. Remember, click that subscribe, click that notification so you don't miss the next episode of the Real Ops Podcast every Sunday, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, only on YouTube, y'all. Let's go.